And we are recording. Okay.
Ooh.
Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where I consistently test Taylor's patience with me. I'm joined here by my co-host Taylor. Hi Taylor, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And I
Good.
gotta put a note on how I tested your patience. We usually record these at 10 a.m. on Saturdays, Central Time.
hmm
The last 2 weeks, I've had to push it back multiple times, and Taylor's been very, very accommodating, and I want to thank her and her
Thank you.
family for being okay with that.
You're welcome. Mostly my family. Thank you, Juan Carlos, for not
Thank you.
murdering me. Yeah.
Thank you, Juan. So let's go ahead and start things off. Taylor, I see you have a lovely new tattoo. Do you want to talk about it?
Oh, sure, sure. I just got a new tattoo. It's a scorpion. It was hand poked today. There's a woman here in Joshua Tree named Taylor, and her name's Taylor also, and she has a place called Love Always Tattoo Shop. And this is my second thing from her. I also got this dinosaur from her as well.
Is hand poked a
No one
lot
can
more
see.
painful? Because I assume that it's more nuanced in detail. Is it more painful than normal? Like,
No, and I think I think, well, this is like just an outline, like, intentionally, like a simple outline. I think the worst thing is the shading of a tattoo. That's the part that hurts the most, since there isn't any shading in this. So,
nice. It looks
that's fine.
awesome. It looks very, very
Yeah.
cool.
Thanks. And my maiden name is Styric, and a Styric is a little tiny scorpion. So,
Like the species, it's a species of a scorpion, right? Okay.
hmm hmm
Sweet. Very
Yeah.
cool. Did not know that. When you told me that earlier this week, I learned something new. Did not know that was a thing.
Who would know that? Yeah.
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 Well, so let's go ahead and kick things off by figuring out what we're going to be drinking today. Taylor, do you want to maybe let us know what yours is, and I'll let you know what mine is?
Yes. So for mine is going to be a non-alcoholic drink, but it's going to be like a nice, like spiced, like chai Indian style tea. So if you wanted to, pour yourself some tea, brew some things, we're going to go to India for my portion today. But also physically, I'm not drinking tea because tea gives me a headache and whatever. I'm drinking champagne, because it's our anniversary.
It is.
Cheers.
It is.
It's a totally normal thing to have a friend-iversary with someone, and it's exciting because it's our 10-year friend-iversary.
It's a big
So
one.
that's pretty cool. We didn't even know what podcasts were 10 years ago, and here we are. So
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, Taylor and I met 10 years ago at our last company in LA. We started on the first day, part of the same cohort, and yeah, been
yeah,
homies ever since.
ever
Um,
since.
so my drink is Lafroig 10. It is scotch. And the reason I have this, because I'm actually drinking it while I'm doing
Yeah, you're
this,
you're holding it very
which
aggressively.
which
So
which usually I don't drink and do these, but I'm gonna do it this time. And the reason I pick scotch is because to me, scotch is a celebratory drink. And so I'm celebrating one thing that's personal and then one thing that's related to our story. The
okay.
personal side of it is being in Austin, and with the ice storm that hit, I'm one of the 30% of Austinites that was without power for about 3 or 4 days. And I just got it back today, and I was just absolutely elated to get it back. As it relates to our story, again, I'm celebrating that I'm not this guy that we're going to talk about. He is so awful. He's one of the worst people
That's great.
I've ever read about and researched, and I just can't. I'm so thrilled that I'm just not him. So
Awesome. Great. I don't even know who it is yet, but I'm also thrilled that you're not him because that sounds bad.
yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and
I heard it open. That was nice.
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pour a little, a finger or two of scotch here in this plastic cup.
It's also a very bright side of you to be like, I'm grateful that my lights are back and not like fuck the Texas power grid. So I appreciate you half full with that one.
Yeah, yeah, it's been awful, and it's funny because today it's 60 degrees here,
hmm
so you didn't wake up just shaking in your bed, and the night 2 nights before was in the 30s, and I was like,
Oh
I
my
really could have
God.
used power those nights. I really could have instead of tonight, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm
You
thankful it's
survived.
here, and I'm off to
Yeah,
Florida tomorrow, so all good things.
great.
So let's go ahead and dive into what my topic is. So I'm going to be discussing Drew Peterson. You know who Drew Peterson is, right, Taylor?
Yes.
It's part of the Peterson men murdering wives era of
Yes.
American true crime.
Yes. but not related to Petersons, but like they were just Petersons.
Totally unrelated. But I feel like I wasn't super into true crime when this went down with Drew, so I think I personally confused the two together, and I just didn't really care.
Hmm.
Maybe it was just like saturation of people killing their spouses, and I just didn't really pay
Yeah,
attention to it at the time. And also, there wasn't much to the story, as we're gonna see. I mean, the outline is extensive, so there's a lot to talk about, but
yeah.
I'll explain why there wasn't all that much to the story when this actually first came out. So to start things off, I'm gonna say, I guess what might be a controversial opinion.
Okay.
I'm not anti-police personally.
Totally. Okay.
So I have not had many negative interactions with police, and I'm totally aware that that's not everyone's experience. I see the news, I pay attention to what's going on. I understand that these people have impossible jobs, very little salary, incredibly high stakes. It's kind of like teachers and
Hmm.
professions like that, where it's kind of like a thankless job, and your ability to screw up is incredibly high. I have that framing in my mind, and I'm totally aware that there's like really shitty versions of these people that are out there. But this is a
Hmm.
general thing. I'm just gonna start at the top that I'm not anti-cop. I'm prefacing that because I also think there's another category that I don't know if anybody's ever coined before that I just thought of when I was drafting this outline. You tell me if you've ever heard of this. Cop bro. Is that a thing?
Oh, no, but I know exactly who you're talking about when
It's
you say that.
the George Zimmerman
Hmm.
types that relish power
Hmm.
without the ability to harness it and use it
Hmm.
productively and constructively.
Hmm.
So I'm coining the phrase. If it hasn't been done before, if it has, let me know and I'll give you credit somewhere in the notes. But Cop
Stop
Bro is a
your
thing,
patent.
and
Yeah,
yeah, and we are talking about Cop Bro today because Drew Peterson, his entire career was in law enforcement, and so
totally.
everything I said about police, take that out of the equation here because that is not who we're talking about here. So
Totally. Oh, wait, can I say something real fast?
please,
Did you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
yeah,
I loved how they handled everything post COVID, post, you know, George Floyd and all of these terrible things happening with the police. I don't know if you got that far in the series, but
tell me.
they
I
handled
didn't.
it
I didn't
really,
see
really
it.
well.
Yeah.
So, spoiler alert, Rosa, one of the cops, she ends up leaving because she doesn't want to be associated with the police force anymore. And so they talk about it and like they really like talk about her decision and how hard it was for her because she loved being a police officer, but she just didn't agree with the way that, America was going with their police force and all these things. And I don't know, they really like they wrapped up the series really beautifully in a time when it was like a real hard anti-cop time.
Rosa
So
was a character, so the character was wanted to exit the show.
yeah. No, yeah, yeah. The character, she's still in the show. It's only the last season that this happens, but she quits working in the police department and talks a lot about how like as like Latino woman, she can't continue to work for the police force. It was interesting. I think they
Yeah,
did a good job. They didn't ignore it.
that's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I said, we're gonna be discussing Drew Peterson today. I'll start by saying, if you're a woman, you do not want to be married to Drew. He is a unique brand of sociopath, and we're gonna get into a bit of his background here. So, like I said earlier, Drew's background is entirely in law enforcement. He had a 30-year career as a police officer and later a sergeant in a suburb of Chicago called Bolingbrook.
Hmm.
I looked this town up. It looks idyllic, not celebration idyllic. It looks sensible idyllic, like it's a normal small town vibe.
I'm from Libertyville, which is a very similar town in of a suburb of Chicago. Yes.
You're from a suburb of Chicago?
I'm from Libertyville, Illinois. I
I
lived there
thought,
till I was 13, then I moved to Las Vegas.
yeah, I was gonna say, I thought you were always from Las Vegas. 10 years, that little nugget of Taylor trivia comes out.
There's still so much to learn.
So much to learn. And I found another interesting thing about Bolingbrook was that the income level was high. It was somewhere around 107,000. I didn't write it down in the outline, but it was above the national average. So we're talking about a relatively sleepy town, despite the fact that it's in a Chicago suburb. So just like frame that as like that's where this guy is trying to enforce the law. There's not much going on, and this is me just projecting. if I was him, I'd be bored out of my mind. Maybe like the way he turned into a sociopath was he just like, I'm so tired of writing tickets for like parallel
Mm-hmm.
parking in the wrong spot, and then he went
Mm-hmm.
down this horrible rabbit hole that he ended up down.
Mm-hmm.
So he retired in 2007 and was given a pretty nice pension of about $67,000 or so a year, which is awesome.
Great.
Yeah, free money. So that's his professional background. Not much more detail we need to go into there. Apparently, he wasn't a terrible cop. He did have actually one and only one misconduct allegation, and that was only for running police searches for fun rather than for work reasons. And then later on, somebody else said, we all do that. We all like, if we're trying to see what our in-laws are up to, we'll run background. Like, it was a common
Oh,
thing.
sure, 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 sure. Okay, okay. Not like going into someone's house and being like, I'm gonna go through your drawers. So being like, I'm gonna look up on the computer if you have any felonies.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly that. Yeah.
sure. Like I was talking to someone today about how if you give me your address, I'm gonna Zillow your house, like 100%. For any reason, I will Zillow your house. I want to see how much you spent on it. I want to see the last time it was sold. I want your square footage on the whole thing, the rent estimate, all of it.
I love how
So
thorough you are.
I get it.
So let's start with our red flags. Drew's relationships. I I promise I'm not picking these types of I'm just picking stories that I find interesting. And the fact that there's a lot of marriages involved is just ancillary to that. Taylor, how many marriages do you think Drew had?
Three,
Four.
four. Okay.
Almost five, actually.
Ooh, okay.
He was engaged a fifth time. Predictably, he was crushing it on both ends of marriage and divorce. His first wife, Carol Brown, was his high school sweetheart. They married in 1974 and divorced once it came to light that Drew was cheating. They
Okay.
had two kids, one of whom, Stephen, is somewhat relevant later on in this story, so we can forget the other kids. Marriage number two was to Vicky Connolly. They stayed married for 10 years, and Vicky had reported domestic violence against Drew before.
Oh.
Later, once the facts of what we're going to be discussing later came to light, she alleges that Drew threatened to kill her, make it look like an accident.
Hmm.
They divorced, and their divorce was finalized in 1992.
Okay.
Marriage number three is where things take a darker turn, an escalation turn.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what's going on here. Is like he's just slowly inching his way into being more and more abusive. There's like something about this in the story we told like 2 weeks ago around like how the older men get, the more they start becoming crazy, and I guess maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's an indication of this. So marriage number three is to Kathleen Salvo. They got married just a few months after the divorce from Vicky. So again, I would say that's a red flag, right?
Yeah, and it must have been really hard for Vicky to like accuse him of that if he's a cop, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know
Yeah,
who you'd go to, like where you'd feel safe making that accusation.
because we'll learn later on that the cop bro culture in this story comes out later on. So
Hmm.
yeah, that had to be that's actually a really really good point. I didn't put it in here, but that's a good point. I'm gonna have to cut it out the fact that I'm saying points so many times.
I think well keep the part in where you tell me I did a good job.
I'll keep
That's
that
fine.
in.
Okay.
So I put down here that I don't care who you are. If someone just got out of an extremely long term and serious relationship, and it doesn't matter what they tell you, they are not ready to get married. I
Yeah.
just don't think that humans are wired like that, right?
And like why? Because we talked about this before, like you can date people, you can live together, whatever. You know, like marriage is
Yeah.
so much paperwork. Like
I don't get why.
why do
Yeah.
that?
He just insisted on constantly marrying these women. And I don't.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? Like, why? Yeah, actually, again, another good point, Taylor. Why does someone just keep getting married over and over like this?
I don't know. I mean, I can't even imagine like having to move out of my house and like divide my stuff up again. That sounds exhausting. And to do that like three times, that sounds like that just doesn't make any sense. Like I feel like it has to be like we talked about with like Henry VIII and the Tudors and why you couldn't get divorced. It has to be just like I want to have legal control over you.
Did you hear that?
No, what was it?
Um, Matt Lane just texted me and it audibly sounded, so I need to mute that.
I didn't hear it at all.
Yeah, I don't totally. So we'll learn later on that Drew actually didn't have that problem of having to file paperwork, and
No.
yeah, he actually found another way around that.
Oh, I did. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, he's a creative type.
Oh
So
gosh.
in March of 2004, Kathleen died under suspicious circumstances.
Mm.
She was found in a bathtub, and her death was ruled an accidental drowning. Just keep Cop Bro in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where the shenanigans start. Taylor, do you remember any part of this case? Because I only remember it because it was part of like an investigation discovery thing, and I always turn that channel on when I have a chance.
I feel like the part I remember that is gonna come in the future does it involve his daughter-in-law in some way?
It does not.
Doesn't? Okay, then I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the bathtub she was found in was dry and contained no water. Apparently, her cause of death was decided on by what's called a coroner's jury, which I've never heard of this before. I thought that when someone dies, they just go to a coroner and they do what they do to identify the cause of death. But in this
Right.
case, in some jurisdictions, and in this jurisdiction in particular, a jury, they are the ones who decide the cause of death. I suppose I didn't get super in the weeds on this, but I suppose what it is that somebody does like an investigation into like the body, and then they send
Hmm.
off the report to this group of 6 or 12, and they make a determination on what the cause of death was.
Wait, are they professionally able to make the distinction? Because it feels like science should be involved.
I will dive way deep into that in a second.
Okay. I'd like a scientist to think about my cause of death and not like
Really? You don't want Copro to do it?
no, I'd like an like a really good
Ah, you're
scientist.
gonna be disappointed then. So that's where things are. Kathleen is found in a dry bathtub, ruled an accidental death by drowning, and that's where things stand, and Drew just moves on. Okay.
Okay, okay, okay.
We're now on to wife number 4. Her name is Stacy Ann Kale. You're gonna keep finding patterns in my stories. Here's another red flag. At the time they married, Drew was 49. Guess how old Stacy was?
22.
19.
Oh no.
30 years
Oh my
difference.
God.
Like, what
That's
do you have in common with a 19-year-old when you're 49?
19 is too young to get married for most people anyway. Like in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. And they ended up having 2 kids. And she actually even adopted Kathleen's kids and raised them like they were her own. And by all accounts, Stacy was a very sweet woman and mother.
Hmm.
In late October of 2007, Stacy was reported missing by her sister Cassandra. Drew claims that Stacy this is so stupid. Drew claims that Stacy called him and said she's leaving him for another man, and that was it. That's
And
it.
then
Like,
hung up.
yeah, like I don't know what happened to Stacy. She just called me and said she's leaving me for somebody else.
And she left her kids there and all that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and that's all we know. Stacy is still missing and presumed dead. I've been researching this to figure out like has anything at all come out in the year. I mean, this is I mean, oh, I'm gonna do math again. 2007 to 2023. That's 6 plus 16 years, right?
16, yeah, yeah.
that's
Great job. Great job.
that's 16 years of absolutely nothing coming out about what happened to this woman.
Wow.
So she's presumed dead, obviously, and
Hmm.
Drew's not saying anything to anybody. We do have some details that seem relevant. So a friend of Drew's told police that he and Drew bought 3 blue plastic barrels sometime around 2003 for a job they were contracted to
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
This is totally 55-gallon blue drum Jeffrey Dahmer vibes, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great.
Drew's stepbrother,
Wait,
it's,
okay,
yeah,
keep going. I'm like, I thought when you said that, I'm like, oh, but he's a cop. So what does he mean what a job he has to do? Like a home construction job, I guess. Whatever.
yeah, he was
Continue.
he was contracted out like as a side hustle to like do odd jobs around
Okay.
town. Yeah. Drew's stepbrother attempted suicide 2 days after helping Drew carry one of these containers, and he later said he feared it contained Stacy's body in it. So that's where things stand with that. But again, that's basically all we have at this point. I think the police may have done some covering up of things, but who really knows? It's worth
Hmm.
noting that none of that slowed Drew down. A year after Stacy's disappearance, he got engaged to a 23-year-old woman named Christina. Yeah.
Now he's like 50 something.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did he meet her at like a singles event? Like, where do you meet these people?
So I know with one of his earlier wives, they actually started a bar together while he was still a cop, and so I assume she ran it or something. Like, maybe he held on to it, so maybe like that's where I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how you organically run into a 23-year-old when you're in your 50s. Dog parks? Maybe that. I don't know.
We'll talk about that this week on Dating Farz in Austin.
Lovely. Luckily, Christina's dad had a ton of sense and basically forced her to break things off and move out of Drew's house. So like it was basically like an ultimatum, like you're not doing this. Because at this point, I would assume that there was news stories popping up around this guy.
Yeah, totally. And weren't all the kids there? Were there a bunch of kids there?
Yeah, I actually don't know where the kids were because the first two kids would have been old enough to have moved on by then. They would have
Okay.
been way past 18 years old, but I don't know about the youngest two. So let's circle back to Kathleen's cause of death. After Stacy went missing, Kathleen's body was exhumed and a forensic examination was conducted. When I read this, Taylor, I thought back to our first episode and you pointing out the great fact that if you kill someone and you control what happens to their body, just cremate the body.
Yeah, for real. Why don't you
Yeah.
get rid of the evidence?
Yeah, be smart,
You do it.
people. The conclusions were that she had in fact died by drowning, but it wasn't an accident. There had been a struggle, and she was later placed in the bathtub because, of course, she was. They showed up to a drowning, and she's totally dry, and there's no water in the tub.
What did she drown in
We don't
then?
know. We don't know what
Okay.
happened,
Okay.
but we know that she had bruising on her back, her torso, her face. There was a gash on her scalp.
Oh my God.
At which point, that death was then classified as a homicide. In 2009, Drew is actually finally indicted for a murder. This murder in particular, Kathleen's.
Hmm.
Again, don't know anything about Stacy. This is just for Kathleen. But it's interesting that like that is what spiraled and prompted this to happen.
Yeah.
So because there was no direct evidence of what happened to Stacy, there's a curious legal procedure. Wait, what did I write here? Yeah, I got it.
This from direct from law school.
Yeah, right.
Is this whatever you say? Yeah.
In 2009, Drew was indicted for Kathleen's murder. Because there's no direct evidence of what happened to Stacy, there's a curious legal procedure thing that the prosecution started to do. So, generally speaking, hearsay evidence, i.e., someone told me this thing happened, isn't allowed except for certain circumstances because the whole point of American justice is you have a right to question your accuser. But if the
Hmm.
person's not there, you're just saying, here's what they said, you don't have that right.
Hmm.
There was such hearsay in this case where it should not have been allowed, and it wasn't. But the hearsay was something along the lines of Drew told me he killed his wives. Illinois, the state legislation really wanted this guy in jail, so they passed a law just for him called Drew's Law, which
Of course they did.
allows this kind of hearsay evidence to be admissible.
Wow.
Basically, it's like ghost testimony.
And they're saying like, fuck you, you're guilty also. And we made
Yeah,
this law after you because
yeah,
that's how much we believe that you're guilty.
yeah, exactly.
So,
So yeah, this law basically allows the hearsay of a dead witness as long as the prosecution can prove they were killed to prevent that testimony.
cool.
Yeah. So also it's funny because I feel like every episode I say we're not a legal procedure show and then I go into legal procedure. So
Well, I mean, also, I mean, it's relevant. You did spend like $1 million to go to law school. So you got to use that money somewhere and you'll use it here.
so paying off.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Lucky me. So ultimately, Drew was found guilty of Kathleen's death. The jurors did say that Drew's law testimony is basically what swayed them. So good on the state legislators for taking quick action.
Yeah.
He was ultimately sentenced to 38 years, which is where he's at. He's in jail right now. Apparently, he got his ass kicked in jail, like his first like couple of days or week there, and so they ended up having to transfer him somewhere different. I think the last I read, he was somewhere in Michigan or Indiana. I can't remember exactly where, but he's just bouncing around.
Right, because he's a cop who's in jail.
Yeah,
I feel like
and
that's not good.
yeah, and I mean he kind of killed like almost kids. Like
Yeah, no, to kill the young women and like why did he is he still think he's does he still say he's innocent?
oh yeah, he see, I really didn't want to turn this super legal procedurally, but a large part of this case is everything that happened after he's convicted, which is just like the multiples of appeals that were run and everything else. And so, like,
Hmm.
that's the state that it's at right now. He's constantly appealing it. He's constantly losing appeal after appeal. And hopefully that's, I mean, I'm going to get into another piece. Like, he is definitely going to rot in jail forever.
Yeah.
So I wrote down a subcategory here called other gross weird shit.
Nice.
And he's so gross. Like, he's such a disgusting human being. In 2009, so after he like he like tried to turn this into his 15 minutes of fame, the fact that his wife was dead. I don't know if you saw videos of this guy. You should look it up. You
I'm
should
gonna look him
YouTube
up.
him
Yeah.
because there's
I'm gonna look up
videos
a
of him
picture.
like he's just like smiling at the camera like a huge grin, like he is overjoyed that people are paying
Hmm.
attention to him in this way, that he's being photographed. Like he thinks that this is like that this makes him cool or more
Yes.
desirable or something. I don't know how to describe it. It's just he's too happy, and I don't know if he understands the gravitas of what's going on, or he just thinks, hey, I mean, he kind of committed the perfect crime, right? His first wife, they said it's accidental. The second one, we still don't know where her body is. So maybe he was just like
Hmm.
so happy with himself and pleased with himself. That's why he's grinning ear to ear in every one of these pictures. So are you looking this picture up?
Yeah, is that Rob Lowe that plays him in like the Lifetime
Yeah,
movie?
yeah, I think so.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
That's
like
what
pretty good
that's
casting.
pretty
Like,
good. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, obviously Rob Lowe is much more handsome, but they make him look less handsome. It's pretty funny.
yeah. So one thing that he did that was so gross. We're gonna talk about his lawyer in a little bit. He and his lawyer went on a talk show, like a morning show, a radio morning show, with this guy who just kept making fun of Drew Peterson about how like
Hmm.
obviously guilty he was.
Hmm.
And his lawyer suggested that the host do a dating game segment with Drew where women can call in and who wants to win a date with Drew.
What?
Yeah.
And did they call in?
No, this radio host had enough sense to say that's in incredibly bad taste. We're definitely not going to do that.
I definitely read something today that already women are writing to that like the Idaho murderer guy and being like, I love him, he's perfect. Because people write to like convicts somehow.
Wait, who is that guy?
The guy who just killed all those like college kids in that place in
Oh my
Idaho.
god, that's
Like
so
already women
gross.
are like, what? Go to a bar, find a dude that hasn't killed someone.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's that hard.
Most people, your odds are better to find someone that hasn't killed someone.
I hope so. I think
Yeah.
so.
So another curiosity here, he's so stupid too. In 2015, so this is after he's convicted and he's in jail for 38 years. He tried to hire someone to kill the prosecutor in his trial.
It's
Think about
impossible to hire someone. You can't, no one is a contracted killer. There's
that.
never been one.
But think about that. Like, if he had done, like, assume he had done this and he gotten away with it, he's still in jail. They're not going to overturn a conviction because the prosecutor's dead.
Yeah,
It-
right. That's
So,
not like what's the end of that? Just to kill him because he's mad?
yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
My
And then,
God.
so he did this in 2015. In 2016, he goes to trial for this. And this is the part that, like, I don't totally get. He got 40 years for this. Maybe because it's like a state government worker or something. Attempting to
Hmm.
kill one of them might have carry more weight than
Actually
definitely
killing a
killing your
woman.
wife. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. I don't totally get that math, but yeah, they tacked on another 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So his
An idiot.
lawyer, this guy, he's such an idiot. Again, I'm drinking scotch because I'm so glad that I'm not this guy. His lawyer apparently says he knows exactly where Stacy is. Shit. So his lawyer apparently knows, or he says he knows where Stacy's body is. He's been stated as saying he knows everything. But that communication is protected by attorney client privilege because there's no harm to be done now. She's already dead. So there's no way that he could break that
Ew.
and disclose it. It's worth noting though that he actually lost his law license for like totally unrelated reasons to Drew Peterson.
I
So
don't
like,
I, yeah, go ahead. I
I
don't
mean,
understand.
yeah, well, so it doesn't matter that he lost his license later on. Like the communication that was had was done earlier than that, and so that's why it's
Totally.
protected. And in addition to that, he's actually under a court order, under a gag order, to not disclose anything. So if he does, he's basically gonna, yeah, he would probably be held in contempt of court at this point, and he could probably be sued by Drew Peterson. But who cares at this point?
But what
So
about Stacy's family? Like, don't they deserve to know where she is?
yeah, I
Aren't
mean
they
that's
the
just
victims?
yeah, but like, but in this case, this supersedes that, the attorney-client privilege.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Sucks.
I mentioned Steven, his son, earlier. So his son was actually a cop too, in a different part of town. He was a cop for about 6 years when this started happening. He was fired for obstructing the investigation into his dad. So he wasn't doing it internally as part of that police force. He was in a different part of town. So that police force was
Hmm.
not investigating the crime. He apparently hid Drew's guns. There was three guns
Oh
that,
God.
yeah, he went into the house when the police were going to execute a search warrant of the house, and then took out the guns. In addition to that,
Hmm.
he accepted $250,000 from his dad. Do you
Oh
remember
my
we talked
God.
about this with the Murdoch family? How,
Yeah, like moving the money around.
yeah, moving the money around because Drew was like, I'm definitely going to jail over
Yeah,
this, and
totally.
somebody can attach themselves to this money. Like one of these families of these women that I married into, they could sue me for wrongful death, and this money just goes away because of that. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to
Hmm.
give my money to Steven, and Steven took it, and he was he was forced out of the police force as a result of it. Which,
Oh, that's good. I was gonna ask, is he still a cop? I hope not.
did I mention that when that jury, the coroner jury pool, was put together, one of the members on that jury was one of Drew's close friends. He was on the police force. They worked together on the police force, and he's the one who told the rest of the jurors Drew would never do this. He would never kill his wife. I know him. He's a great guy. Again, cop bro coming out.
What the hell? What the hell is a coroner's jury? That makes no sense. I
I
want
don't.
I
It's
want
a
12
weird
coroners.
curiosity.
I want like 12 doctors,
Yeah, yeah.
13 baker's dozen of doctors to be on that coroner's jury. I don't want the murderer's best friend who's a cop.
And that's the thing. It's like, did nobody do research and understand like who they're putting on? Because think about that. If they had, so that actually probably would have saved Stacy's life, right? Because
Yeah.
if they had actually done a thorough investigation into Kathleen's death, then he probably would have gone to jail then over that, and there would be no
Yeah.
Stacy Peterson to speak of.
Right. Exactly.
So
Oh,
So yeah, that's where things are. So as of right now, again, I researched this. There is no updates on Stacy's whereabouts on her body. Nobody knows. All we know is that people saw this blue drum being loaded into Drew's. I call him Scott. Again, like the overlap is just
exactly.
constant.
It was a Petersons murdering their wives period of American history.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where things are right now. He's in jail. He's presumably going to die in jail again, and totally tacked on about 78 years for
Wow.
what he did. And we're never going to get any sort of resolution or conclusion onto what happened to Stacy, in
What an
theory.
asshole.
Yeah, yeah. When you saw his pictures, did he remind you of anyone?
No. Who does he remind you of? He looks like a cop.
He does look like a cop. It's not that it's a person that he reminds me of. It's more like the ongoing theme of the shitheads that I bring up. He reminded me of Chad Vallow,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
or Chad
Definitely.
Daybell. Yeah.
Chad Daybell, I can see that for sure. For sure.
Like just beer gut, way too happy and confident in himself. Like I don't know.
A lot of
It-
commitment to this mustache.
he's a type.
Yeah. I just want to make it clear that he looks nothing like Rob Lowe. They made Rob Lowe look worse to play him
He
in a
looks
movie.
he looks no, yeah. He looks like a retired professional wrestler, like at 60 years old. Like he does not look good. They were so generous giving him Rob Lowe.
So generous.
That's like if George
Yes.
Clooney played me. It's
Yeah.
like guys, like
Yeah. No.
you gotta do something here. But that's um that's true.
That sucks. Those poor kids, those poor
They're
ladies.
kids,
Yeah.
19 and 23 years old. Like it's again, ladies, like pay attention to this stuff. Like if the guy's just
Yeah.
constantly getting married, if women come in and out of his life and disappear under circumstances that did not I don't so I'm trying to think to myself, I most of my friends at this age are married and none of them have I'm trying to think. I don't think any of my friends have spouses that died.
Or no. Mm-mm. I know someone whose, spouse died tragically, but it wasn't suspicious, you
Well,
know?
sorry. I mean
Yeah.
like sure, like if somebody God forbid dies in a car accident or whatever,
Yeah.
like I get that, but like yeah, my fully able-bodied wife drowned in
Is
the
gone.
bathtub. Like
Yeah.
it's like that's like a weird that's a next level. It's too close
Hmm.
to she was killed.
Yeah, totally. And even like, well, the disappearing is like real bad.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, my last wife, she disappeared. Okay. Is she a magician? Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like that's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Like to me, it's like the age gap thing is crazy. The constantly marrying people over and over again. Again, like if somebody gets out of a 10-year marriage with like kids involved and like immediately is in another relationship and marries that, like nobody's wired like that. Almost, I would
Yeah.
say almost nobody is wired like that to actually do that.
I do have an idea for a dating app called Widow or Won't Ya, for people who are widowed in like their late 20s, early 30s, who like to no fault of their own really wanted to continue to be married, but like something terrible happened. So they're ready to be married because I know a lot of women in their like mid 30s who really want to be married, but they're not finding that men want to be that committed. But if you find someone who like wanted to be married but couldn't be because the person died and don't feel like they could match together. It's for not for widows to get with each other, it's for a widow to get with a single person.
Why wouldn't they just go on a regular? Because
Because
aren't isn't
because then
everybody on a regular dating app?
I mean, I don't know. I've never been in a dating app, but the idea is that like the widow is like really, really ready to be married because they were married, and then someone who is also ready to be married, they can find each other because sometimes I presume on a dating app you find someone who's like not that serious. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm gonna workshop it,
you got to
but I'm
workshop a little
saying
bit.
widower, won't you?
I feel like well, the name is good, but I feel like the demographic is pretty niche, and I'm wondering who the
Is it
advertisers would be for that. Box wine sellers? Like I don't know
funeral
who.
homes?
Huh?
Yeah, funeral homes.
It's getting dark. You got dark
All
with
right,
it.
I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna work on it. I'll
Workshop
decide.
it a little bit.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
That's my story for the week.
Ooh, I hope that he's having a terrible time in jail.
I'm
And I
sure
hope
he's
that
having a
someone
terrible
tells
time.
someone where Cece is because her family deserves to know where her body is and give her a proper all the things.
It has to come out at some point. It just has
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. It's rude not to. Cool. Well,
So,
thanks
so
for
what do you
sharing.
have for us that is tea and or champagne related?
It's mostly tea related. But I know I've talked about how I definitely don't want to do just like Western history and like white people. So today we're going to go to India. So what is the most famous building in India?
Taj Mahal.
Taj Mahal. That's what we're talking about today. The Taj Mahal.
Oh,
Um,
this is gonna be a good one.
Did you know that the Taj Mahal is one of the seven wonders of the world at the moment?
No.
Can you name any of them? There's seven wonders of the ancient world and seven wonders of like the world that are still around.
Grand Canyon, the towers, the gardens of Babylon, Taj Mahal. I'm out. Amazon
Grand Canyon,
rainforest.
no, those are like natural things. We're talking about these are all things that like people built.
Oh, the Great Wall of China.
Yes. So good. I'm just gonna tell you, so you don't have to keep guessing. Um, the ancient world, there's a bunch of big statues. There's the Colossus of Rhodes, which is like a big statue of a god. There's a statue of Zeus at Olympia. The only one that we can still see is the Great Pyramids. There's the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. You got that one. There's a Temple of Artemis, a mausoleum at Halicarnassus, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria. So most six of those we can't see anymore, but we like know that they existed. Of the current world, things that we can see, there's the Colosseum, the Great Wall of China, the Taj Mahal, Christ the Redeemer in Brazil, Machu Picchu, Chichen Itza, and the Petra in Jordan. So it's one of the seven wonders of the world. It's a beautiful building. We'll talk about the architecture and when it was built. But I wanted to also start with reading some of the one-star reviews on Google reviews, just to get an idea of what it's like to visit the Taj Mahal. So, a person named Kevin recently wrote, 1 star, there was no McDonald's nearby, which for a tourist spot is a shame. Also, it needed an audio tour as I refused to learn how to read. So I think
Like,
maybe he's joking.
yeah, I kind of like Kevin's sense of humor.
Then there's a Julia with a accent over the U that says, the beauty of this place is just destroyed by the stupidness of the people. You can't even enjoy the moment because you will be told millions of times, move, we're taking a picture. So it sounds very crowded when you go visit it. This is my favorite. It's one from ZH, just the initials, and it's long, but part of it is they visited it 3 times, and this time was the worst ever. There was no internet and no mobile network. They provide Wi-Fi for 30 minutes, but after 18 minutes, it was turned off. They say you can pay for a longer connection, but there is no link to pay to the website anywhere. I went inside expecting to pay and get Wi-Fi, but I wasted an hour trying to connect to the stupid Wi-Fi. Like,
These people are not
what?
living in the moment.
You're in the Taj Mahal and you're looking at your phone
Yeah.
trying to get on the Wi-Fi? Just take some pictures and put them on Instagram later.
So I vehemently refuse to visit Italy or France
hmm Okay.
because I know that the Italy thing is probably weird to you, but
I
it's
mean,
because
both those are weird, but continue.
it's so touristy. It's like all the
No,
stuff
that's
that you'd
fair.
want to go to. It's like I said, like I avoid crowds. I avoid large gatherings as much as I possibly can. Like the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, like all the things that you'd
Yeah.
want to do there, it's just probably gonna be cram packed with Kevins.
And that's what it sounds like the Taj Mahal is like too. It's like very, very crowded, like
Yeah,
almost
sounds like
constantly. But you know who else gave a positive review of the Taj Mahal is Eleanor Roosevelt. She went to visit it in the 1950s. And so Eleanor said, I think of all the things I've seen in the world, this is the most perfectly proportioned. The purity of the white marble makes the conception of the internal purity of real love a very living thing. I escaped the guides as much as possible because I felt that this was a perfection that one must feel and let sink in. It could not just be talked about. So it's a nice review from
yeah,
our dear ER about it.
she's so eloquent
Yeah.
consistently.
That was in my day, her daily column about what she was up to. That was in the 50s. So the Taj Mahal is really hard to research. So I looked at like Wikipedia pages and some articles, but it felt like there's either like a pretty straightforward history or there's conspiracy theories, and there's not much in between about like what actually happened. So I had a hard time. I was like looking around the internet and I was looking at podcasts and books and I couldn't find anything. And this morning I finally found one that I listened to this afternoon that was from the BBC called You're Dead to Me. And it told a more nuanced story of the Mughal Empire and the Taj Mahal that we'll talk about. But it was hard to find more. And I feel like there is a lot more to this story that like just isn't available for whatever reason. But the Taj Mahal is a mausoleum located in Agra, India. So it's the north center of India. So if I take my hand and flip it over, so it looks like India, it's right here, like in the top of my palm.
This is an audio medium, so nobody
I
can
know, but
see
I
what
feel
you're
like you get
doing.
it. India looks like a palm upside down. So like
Got
up
it.
in the top. Okay. That's where it is. It's in the middle. It's not on the coast. It's in the middle. It is next to a river. It was built by Mughal Empire Shah Jahan in memory of his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal. So Shah Jahan was born in 1592. When he was born, his name was Prince Khurram. He's a direct descendant of Genghis Khan and a powerful line of Khans and warriors that are moving into India. So a lot of violence to kind of get here, but this empire was huge. So we're at the same time as like the Tudors, like right after Elizabeth I. So we're like 100 years after the Henry VIII story. So it's pretty modern, really. It's like not that long ago that all this happened. And it was like these like Mongol empires moving down into India. This empire is called the Mughal, Mughal. But that's kind of where he comes from. They're Islamic empire that came down into India. And I also want to mention that everybody should listen to The Wrath of the Khans by Dan Carlin. He talks about Genghis Khan, and I'm really, really nervous that I'm going to
Chengiz.
say it wrong exactly because you have to say Genghis because that's what Dan Carlin says, and I'm like, I have to say it the correct way, and the correct way is the Dan Carlin way. So we're
Always.
going Genghis Khan. So a direct descendant of Genghis Khan, Shah Jahan becomes emperor. Shah Jahan means king of the world. And in order to become emperor, he needed to fight his brothers, essentially. So it wasn't always the oldest became the ruler. It was, the one who could, maybe fight to the death, fight till the blinding. They would blind each other, things like that. So people were pretty like mauled to get to power. And so it's a lot of that. And a lot of also like even like the Mongols, when I listened to Wrath of the Khans, halfway through I was like, why aren't we all Mongols? It makes no sense that they didn't just, take over the entire world. They were very, very far on their way to doing that. And it's the same reason that we talk about with Catherine the Great and with Henry VIII. It's that you're not guaranteed to have smart kids and you are probably gonna have dumb ones. And it's just like dumb kids
Did
who
you
fighting.
did you know that the Dothrakis of Game of Thrones was based on the Mongols?
That makes sense. Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely. So, you'd think that they would be really like they were on their way. But once Genghis Khan passed away, his sons divided up the empire and they fought each other and then it disappeared. It just is, it's as simple as that, like one generation and it can be gone. But Shah Jahan becomes emperor of the Mughal Empire. He married three women, but his favorite was Mumtaz Mahal, which means jewel of the palace. She had a different name before they were married, but that was the name that she's, named by history. She was also semi-royalty, so she was like part of the upper class. They got engaged and were engaged for 5 years before they got married. So in the meantime, he had married another person. And then he married someone else after, but those were like political marriages, and he like really loved Mumtaz Mahal. And then also the name Taj Mahal, like no one really knows where it comes from, and they think it kind of talks, it's kind of a way of like saying Mumtaz Mahal in a different way.
Are you saying Taz, like T-A-S Mahal?
Her name, Mumtaz, Mumtaz.
T-A-Z.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that is maybe where the word Taj Mahal came from, but like they're not, no one's really 100% sure.
maybe. So in old literature, you'll notice that the characters might look the same, but they'll be pronounced differently. So for example, in old English literature, I bought a book for my dad that was like a 19 like or not it was like a 1500s copy of something or a book, but
Hmm.
it had no S's because all the F's back then were
Yeah,
pronounced
yeah,
S. And so it could be one of those
yeah.
situations.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure that I have absolutely no idea how these were actually pronounced. So
Right.
I'm trying my best. Um, And so they were married in 1612. He became emperor in 1628. So again, we're about 90 years after Henry VIII. So 1603 is when Elizabeth I, her rule ends and the Tudor line ends. So it's kind of lining up. So we know that Mumtaz Mahal dies. Like that's the whole point of the whole Taj Mahal and the whole story. It's a tomb for her. Guess what she died doing?
Childbirth.
Yeah, she's having a baby. She was
Yeah.
having her 14th baby.
Jeez.
She's 38 years old, having her 14th child. Only seven of her kids survived, like into adulthood, which is a terrible odds. And well, she died giving birth to her 14th child. She was 38 years old. And I've been thinking, like, as I was saying, it was hard to find information about this. And I was like, is this a tragic love story? Like, everyone's wife died of childbirth. Like, I don't know. I don't want to like be a jerk, but like that happened all the time. And he had two other wives. So like kind of whatever. But all accounts are that they did love each other. She traveled with him on military campaigns, and he only had like one child with his other wives for like political reasons. So I guess that's romantic.
Yeah. So this was
Anyway,
this was his actual like true
yeah,
love.
yes. And he was devastated when she died. And so he, spent a couple days in exile, just like being sad, and then came out and said that he wanted to build like a big monument to her. And that is the Taj Mahal, but he also built it to show his power and status because it's huge and it's gorgeous. And
Have
so
you
he
been?
really wanted to show. No, my sister has. I'm trying to find the picture of her there, but I haven't been.
It's interesting because with all those old, artifacts, buildings, I don't know what you would say, but like the scale of it is hard to understand when you see them in pictures.
Hmm.
But that'll be the case with the Taj Mahal too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm gonna talk about that in a little bit because I have some, stats on what it looks like and the kind of where it is in the city. But it took 22 years to build, and during that time, Shah Jahan was overthrown by one of his sons that he had with Mumtaz Mahal, and he put his dad in prison for 8 years. But when Shah Jahan died, he did get to be buried in the Taj Mahal as well. So his life didn't end as like in like supreme power, but his son it did let him get buried, next to his beloved wife. So I'll talk about conspiracy theories in a little bit, but some things that I found that aren't like verified, but they're not controversial. So like they could be true and doesn't matter. So I heard it cost, if you converted it to today's money in dollars, it cost $1 billion to build. So it was like super, best of the best of everything. 20,000 people worked on it, and it was a mixture of artisans and probably some slaves, probably some people who were paid, really poorly. But like the pyramids, so there's like a new thought about the pyramids that it wasn't just exclusively built by slaves because it had to be, there had to be architects and people who were invested in it, and wanted to, make it a beautiful thing. So same in this case, there's people who like worked really hard to make it very beautiful. This is also the time of the Deccan famine, which was 1630 to 1632, where it was a few years of failed crops. So it isn't mentioned in a lot of information, but it does show that there's probably something else that happened where, like, if everyone's starving and you're spending $1 billion on this building, like, something's wrong. And people are probably like upset and like a lot of people are dying. You know what I mean?
Taylor, you're probably gonna get to this. Is it literally just a mausoleum?
No, there's a couple other things in it as well.
Like rooms, restaurants, hotel, like
There is, so, okay, wait, let me get to this.
okay, if
Let me
I'm
speed
stepping
through
on your
this.
stories,
No,
just
no, 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 no. Wait, I'm gonna tell you one more fun thing and then I'll tell you more about it.
cool.
So one fun thing that I think we kind of alluded to is that because it's so big, it's like so big and so grand, they had to have scaffolding, obviously, and scaffolding is typically made of bamboo. So, like in ancient China, they had two-story buildings because they could make really strong scaffolding out of bamboo before anybody else could. And so, but in this case, the scaffolding was made out of bricks. And then when they were done, they were like, "How are we going to get rid of all these bricks?" So they like put up a sign and they were like, "Free bricks, come and get them," and it was gone in like a day. So they just
It's
let like other
creative.
people take them, which is a great idea. So wait, so let's talk about what it looks like and like kind of what is in it. So I did look on Google Maps to see where it was because if you look at like Google Maps of like Stonehenge, there's a parking lot right next to it, and even like the Great Pyramids, you're like, oh, like a quarter of a mile away, there's a Pizza Hut, and there's like the city. So it's not like it's like its own thing, but this is pretty encased in like some walls and there's beautiful gardens and then there's the Taj Mahal itself in the middle with like a fountain. Like that's the picture that you see all the time of people like sitting on the fountain with the Taj Mahal in the back. And it also has a big forest preserve next to it. So it is a little bit isolated. It's right next to a river as well. So it is a symmetrical building with a large white marble dome in the center, surrounded by four smaller domes. And then there's four minarets, which is like those big towers all around it. And those aren't straight. They like turn a little bit to help protect them from earthquakes. So they want to make sure that like, are you looking at a picture of it?
So I pulled up Google Maps to look up
Yeah.
the location of Stonehenge,
Mm.
and then I also pulled up another tab to look up the location of Taj Mahal, and I was like, this map looks eerily familiar, and it pulled up the Taj Mahal Indian restaurant in Austin. So I have not found it yet.
Correct. So not that one. Go to Agra, India. I'm sure there's a million Taj Mahal Indian restaurants, and I'm sure they're all delicious. But it's made of so. Anyway, when you do see it, the four big towers around it, they're not straight up
Yeah,
and down. They turn because they move in case of earthquakes, and which is like something that they do now with office buildings and skyscrapers. The main structure is made of white marble, which is inlaid with intricate designs. So they have like writing from the Quran because it's a Muslim, building made by Muslims, so it has writing from the Quran all
really.
around it, and it's not because it's not Hindu, it's Muslim,
Oh,
and
that's
it also has like you were asking about other buildings, so there's also a smaller um part that's like made out of red sandstone. That's a mosque, so there's a mosque there as well.
I was gonna say because the architecture like is just incredibly reminiscent of Arabic
Yeah. So it's a
architecture and mosques. Like it's more vibes, more-ish vibes than it is
Mhm.
Indian vibes to me. It's beautiful. I'm looking at it right now. It is next level.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's because the Mughal Empire was, a Muslim empire that was going down and, using their traditions and their architecture, but it also kind of blends with the native architecture as well to, create this. But it does have a mosque in the back of it. And so all of the calligraphy around it is inlaid stone and marble. So it's not painted. It's like they cut out the words and then like, put them in with different color marble. So it's super beautiful and like lasts forever. Um, in accordance with Muslim law, no animals or humans are carved in the Taj Mahal, so it's just like vegetation and words, which I think is interesting because when you go to like the Vatican, you see like 7,000 images of people like doing crazy things, and it's just like people everywhere. But in Taj Mahal, it's not people, it's just like the earth and then the words. So it is a blend of Indian, Persian, and Islamic styles. The symmetry is a big part of the design. So, like the middle tower, the four towers, and the four minarets around it. The it's also you're not supposed to have like a really fancy tomb in the Muslim belief system. So, Shah Jahan and Mumtaz are actually buried underneath the Taj Mahal in like a very simple room. And there's like a fake sarcophagus above them where they're not buried. That's like part of like the more intricate part of it.
Interesting.
Um, So some other cool things is it changes color during the day. Like not really, but like the way the sunlight is
It's
on it, it
pink,
always
right?
looks
It turns
different.
pink.
It turns pink, yeah,
Yeah.
which is cool. And you can actually book a tour during the full moon as long as it isn't Ramadan. But I'm sure that's beautiful as well because the full moon would be like super bright and you would see it. Um,
Taylor, can I interject one piece?
yes.
So growing up, like I hadn't really gone to like Muslim funerals because like I wasn't really raised religious, right? Like it wasn't really a thing in my family.
Hmm.
Um, but I knew enough about like American culture to know that like you get like the velvet lined casket with like it's just impenetrable, beautiful oak, this, that, and the other with like the
Hmm.
gold railing and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And when I've had family members pass and they wanted to get buried in Muslim ground,
Hmm.
it is literally just like plywood you would buy from Home Depot that the body is
Yeah.
contained. And the entire idea, which I actually like, the body's wrapped in it's washed and it's wrapped in like a fabric. There's like rose water
Hmm.
poured on it and stuff like that. But it's
Hmm.
really just like put into this like very shabby box. I'm sure collapses under the weight of whatever dirt is being thrown on it. But what I loved about it was part of the belief system is your body's not really yours, it's
Yeah.
nature's, and the whole
Hmm.
point is don't make something impenetrable so nothing gets your body. You need your body to go back into nature, and
Totally.
this just reminded me of that.
No, and I love that. And so I live in Joshua Tree and there's a Joshua Tree cemetery. It's our memorial park. I can see it from my house. And they have a part of it where you can be buried like that, like without even the plywood. You're just wrapped in a shroud and they put you in the ground and your family can come and like put rocks around where you are. It's something crazy and you become part of the earth again. And I definitely want to do that. Like I went to it and I stood in that area and I can see my house from there and I was like, this is
That's it.
exactly what I want. This seems awesome. But yeah, I love that because otherwise you're like, what, in your best suit in a
Yeah,
coffin underground forever? That yeah, I love the going back to the earth part. That total like a simple burial place makes a lot of sense
yeah,
to me.
totally.
Yeah.
Same page.
Yeah. Um, right now, if you went to the Taj Mahal and if you're looking on Google Maps, there's the buildings and then there's beautiful gardens. So the gardens originally were like, kind of overgrown, beautiful pollinator gardens with like very fragrant, very beautiful flowers. And of course, guess who ruined them and made them boring?
I That's a tough one. I don't know the characters enough.
The British.
See,
Because
I wasn't gonna guess that.
we're about to get to the point, and I'm not even going to talk about this, where the East India Company is, moving into India and about to like take over and like ruin everything. So the British are on their way, and they do like redo the gardens to look like a typical European garden. But thankfully, they didn't do anything to the building. So the garden isn't exactly the way that it would have been when it was originally made. Right now, the biggest threat to the Taj Mahal is pollution.
Yeah, I can
So you
believe that.
actually used to be able to drive up in front of it. You can't anymore. So they try to like keep it clean and keep cars away from it and things like that because it's hard to damage the white marble, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
And like the other stuff I have are like I have some fun facts and some conspiracy theories, but I just don't know a ton about this relationship between Mumtaz Mahal and Shah Jahan. I wish I knew more about it, but it's like she was a good wife. She went with him on military campaigns. He probably trusted her. They had a fuck ton of kids, and he loved her enough to build this building. I wish I knew more. I
If
couldn't
you
find anything else.
So I googled Taj Mahal original because I thought maybe there'd be like paintings or something of like the
Hmm.
original version of it before you said the British showed up. I Google everything as you say it, which is probably annoying with
Nice.
the keystrokes. But
It's fine.
like on the first page, there's a picture of Trump with Melania on in front of that
Ew.
fountain, and she is so happy to be there, and he could not look more annoyed. Like, why am I here? Uh,
That's so funny. I feel like I never see her genuinely happy, so shit,
yeah,
good for her.
yeah. She's probably happy
Gross.
because she's in that location more than who she's with.
Totally. Ugh, ugh. Um, so I have some fun facts. So during World War II and during the Indo-Pakistani wars in the 70s, the Taj Mahal was camouflaged to avoid it being destroyed. So they were worried that Japan was going to bomb the Taj Mahal during World War II. So I have a picture of it that I'll share. They cover the dome in like bamboo sticks, so you can't really see it. And then in the 70s, they did like a thing with like a tarp over the top and like lines for the minarets and a whole thing.
Sorry,
So
which
like
war?
during World War II.
Why would anyone? India wasn't in the war.
I mean, everyone was in the war. It was a world war. And Japan was like coming that way.
I guess
What do you mean you guessed? Japan was like destroying China and coming down through China. And then they were like
they
planning to
weren't.
take over the world.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to do my research on this because I
I'm
did
gonna need
not
you to
know.
Google the rape of Nanking because it's fucking terrible.
Was that World War II though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's where the disconnect is. I actually
Let
didn't
me make
realize
sure.
that that was happening at the same time as everything else that was going on. Because to me, it was like the Axis and the Allies were going to war, and the Chinese were not a part of the Allies. I
Right.
think.
No, they weren't like officially, but they were definitely being like invaded by Japan.
You know what? I defer to you on history
Okay, it's
stuff.
like right before. I'm looking it up. It says the Nanking Massacre was from in December 1937 for 6 weeks. So it was like that was the plan was to move westward.
Okay, you know what? I got to fact check in real time.
Oh my God. I'm real embarrassed because I'm sorry. I like, feel like I'm gonna be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
The Sino-Japanese War. That's what I need to look up. Sino-Japanese War. The second. You know what? They were at war together. They were not
During that
part
time?
of. Yeah, they were not at World War. Japan obviously was fighting. So okay. So Japan would have been fighting a two-front war with the
Okay.
Axis,
Yes.
and then also fighting China during the second Sino-Japanese War. That's what was going on. That was 1937 and 1945. I think World War II was 39 to 45.
Yes. Okay, that totally makes sense because the Nanking was earlier, so it must have been the second one that when they thought that they might bomb the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, that makes. Yeah. Okay.
All right, well, I'm
Instant
gonna get
fact
a
check.
I'm gonna get a really big like board and just do a bunch of like red lines together and like go crazy here.
So
And
you're technically not wrong. You got the timing
of
exactly
course I'm
right.
not
They
wrong.
just weren't a part of World War II.
Fine, fine, fine. I accept that.
Sorry to do this.
That's fair. No, 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 it's fine. But something I wanted to also bring up during that is I worked at the Brooklyn Museum for a little bit in college, and one of my jobs, because it was a terrible, terrifying time to be in America, it was like 2003. So I looked in the archives of the Brooklyn Museum, like their communication archives, to figure out what they did with the art during World War II. And they brought it up to like a barn in Poughkeepsie and like hid it because they were worried that uh, if the Nazis attacked New York, they would destroy all the art, which they did, obviously all over Europe. So even in America, we had plans to hide our art.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have some fun conspiracy theories. So there's one theory that it's actually not even built by Shah Jahan. It was an 11th century Hindu temple. Which sounds really fun because I read the article that had like 150 reasons why it's actually a Hindu temple. And it was like people keep finding Hindu gods in like the corners, and there's all these like secret places where things look like they're actually more like of a Hindu origin than a Muslim origin. But then I read again and figured out that it's actually a kind of nationalistic right-wing Indian conspiracy theory right now because they want to like reclaim it as a Hindu building when it isn't. So I don't think that's true. I think it's not.
You don't associate nationalism. Of course, every country has nationalists.
Of course they do. No, I know. I thought that too. And I was like, a right-wing conspiracy theory, what could that be? I was like, oh, it's like a nationalistic conspiracy theory trying to be like, oh, it's like a pure, Indian place when
Yeah.
it's not, but it's from a part in history that like is super important. The conspiracy theorists also think that there are 22 hidden rooms in the basement of the Taj Mahal, which might not be true. Some people say it's true, some people doesn't. Um,
Would
it's
you spend a
also
night in? Would you spend a night in one of those rooms?
yes.
No
It doesn't
prize. There's no. You just have to like go in there and lay down a blanket and go to sleep.
it doesn't feel ghosty to me.
There's
Even though it's
dead.
a
There's two dead bodies.
no, I know, but it still doesn't feel ghosty. It feels like you'd be fine. I feel like I'd be more scared to be in like an old timey mansion full of stuff. Like when I think of like haunted houses, I think of like, you know, like a big haunted mansion, not like a empty room in the bottom of a big building.
So I disagree with you, and here's exactly what I would have done as I would researching this. I would have questioned how many people died building the Taj Mahal
I
and
know
how many
that's fair.
people
No, no.
died inside of it later on, because
Yeah,
there's gotta be, to me, I feel like it would be a haunted place, but I'd still do it because the story's so good. The story's
I know.
fantastic. I spent the night in the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, of course.
Incredible.
Yeah. And there is also another conspiracy that Shah Jahan didn't want anyone to be able to recreate anything so beautiful, so he blinded all of the architects who worked on it.
It's
But I don't think
intense.
that's true because
Yeah.
like 20,000 people worked on it, and like I was thinking of like the logistics of blinding 20,000 people, and I feel like maybe the first one you'd be like, I'm in charge. By like 100, you'd be like, this is gross, and I'm standing next to 200 eyeballs,
Yeah.
and
Also, think about
don't
all
want
the,
anything to do this anymore.
yeah, then you gotta like train 20,000 seeing eye dogs for them, and it's just get by
Exactly.
20,000 can like the logistics alone.
Exactly. It sounds exhausting. So there's no way that's true. Um, Another fun conspiracy theory that was actually brought forth like a French dude who visited India in like the early 1900s-ish was that Shah Jahan was planning to build an identical black building across the river for his own mausoleum, which would have been so cool.
That would have been
Like,
amazing.
how dope would that be to have like a big, oh my God, like a big black Taj Mahal that was like that one I'd be afraid to stay the night in. That's super cool. But that's probably not true.
That's such a flex.
Yeah, but that would be awesome. And that's it. That's all I know. I wish I knew more. And there's definitely like a whole part of the top of India and like the sweeping rulers and khans and all of that that came through there that I wish I knew more about, and I will eventually learn more about. But it's if you look it up, it's going to tell you it's a love story. So let's just stick with that, that it's a love
Yeah.
story.
That's all I ever knew about it. Like I wouldn't say that my I, I would defer to like I'm probably best at American history, followed by World War II, World War One, and then like the stories my dad has told me about Iranian history. But
Hmm.
so I'm not like incredibly well versed in Indian history. The one thing I knew was that it was a love story. Like he built it
Hmm.
for a woman that he loved, and I was actually surprised when you said that it's a Muslim thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that,
Hmm.
or that it was Persian. That it had Persian architectural influences. I would have. I don't know, but that seems relevant, and
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
never knew that.
Yeah. And that's why, why that the nationalistic thing is trying to make it be like, oh, it was always a Hindu thing when it wasn't. But it was just it's a relic of a time of, a lot of people taking over different parts of Asia in different ways. So
What was
it's true.
Blair's take on it when she was there?
I didn't. I know she went on a really cool, she's a vegan and she went on a tour from like Vegetarian Magazine, had like a thing where you could like join a group of other vegetarians and travel around India for like three weeks,
That's really cool.
which sounds great and delicious. And so she came
Yeah.
home and, we learned how to make like chapati, like the bread and like all different kinds of like things because I took an Indian cooking class with my sister-in-law one time and I have a book about curry, and it's super fun. I had a roommate who was Indian in college, and that was like the first time I'd ever really tried Indian food. And I was like, "How do you make this?" And she was like, "It's all ingredients you've never heard of, you know. So you have to like
Yeah.
buy really special things to like make it, which is really cool." So when Blair came back, we did a lot of cooking with like, but you have to go to the store and buy like 16 new spices you've never heard of.
And they're all
Uh,
expensive.
and they're all expensive, but it's here in Joshua Tree, we have two Indian markets, so I should
Really?
go and get them. Yeah, we have a great, actually, a really good place called Sam's Indian Food, and they sell pizza, sub sandwiches, and Indian food, and it's delicious.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I would say that if I was forced to be vegan or just purely vegetarian, access to Indian food is the only way to go.
yeah, absolutely. It's so flavorful and so rich and
Yeah.
delicious. Yeah. So that's why she went, but I'm sure but she has that same picture everybody has where they're sitting in front of the fountain in front of the Taj Mahal, and I'm sure that was like a 2 hour wait in line of people being like, "Get out of my way, I got to take a picture."
Yeah. Yeah. Again, touristy things not on my hit list. Taj Mahal definitely not on my hit list, but it looks cool.
Yeah. Yeah, last time I went to Florence, Italy, I was like, there are too many Americans here. So I get it.
I went to Lisbon last March and I don't think I interacted with a single Portuguese person while I was there. It was just
Totally.
Brits, tons of Americans, uh,
Hmm.
Korean folks. Like it was just expats. It was just
Yeah.
mostly like an expat part of the world now.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know. Cool. It's cool that there's, stuff that we didn't necessarily learn about in school, like a little bit deeper into these things, and we'll keep talking about those things. So any ideas anyone has of any like non-white stories I can tell, please tell me because I only have about 40 ideas, and if we want to do this for at least for over a year, I'm gonna need more.
what is there a red flag in this?
I feel like the part that I think could possibly be the red flag is building the building in general. Like, why did he have to do that? Like, he could have just been, we're gonna get buried together, which is beautiful because they love each other. Like, he didn't have to build this big building, so I feel like there's definitely an ulterior motive there that's not really talked about, and that must be like just showing everybody the power of the empire.
Could be love bombing,
It could be love bombing.
but she's dead.
That's true. Could be love
He,
bombing the people. And also,
yeah,
it's potentially during, I mean, it's definitely during that plague time, but also like he spent all his money on this thing and people were starving. So that's not great.
yeah. $1 billion
But
is a lot. The Cowboy Stadium cost 1.2 billion to build, for
is it nice?
context. Yeah,
Is
it's like a
anyone
nice.
buried in it?
No,
Oh,
we'll never know.
missed opportunity. Is
Missed
Tony
opportunity.
Romo dead? He can be buried there.
No, he's definitely not dead.
Okay. Just a suggestion. I think that they could bury Tony Romo in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium and lots of people would go.
Yeah, yeah. I think Jimmy Hoffa's supposed to be buried under the in Jets 50-yard line at the Meadowlands.
That's awesome.
Um,
Let's dig that up.
cool, Taylor. Well, I
Cool,
know
Farz.
that we are late because of me and we went over, so thank you again for your patience. And next weekend, 100% regular show recording schedule. Like nothing
Perfect.
on earth is going to stop me from that. Okay,
Okay, well, you tell that to the Texas power grid and keep your fingers crossed.
fingers are crossed. Nothing will stop me.
Have a great
Um,
trip to Florida. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Follow us, Doomed to Fail Pod, on Instagram and Facebook.
thank
And
you,
message
everyone.
us if you know anything.
Yeah, we're getting some really great DMs on Facebook Messenger from folks who are like are giving us insight into stories that are obscure and interesting and cool that we could be covering. So please, more of those are always welcome. So thank you.
Yeah, and please review on Apple Podcasts. That's been really cool and helpful as well.
Yes, all the things. Thank
Well,
you.
thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Taylor.
Thanks, Mars.
Bye.